Good morning, church. I love your pastor. I had the privilege of having breakfast with he and Miss Starla yesterday, and we had just an incredible time. And what an incredible gift of God they are to the body of Christ. And we rejoice at everything God is using them to do. They're actually at a friend of mine's church, Darius Johnston. Darius and I traveled, my first evangelistic trip. Darius and I traveled, and he let me preach in Marvin Gorman's church. And so just a great church and a great work they're doing. Many of you may not know it, but when this church started, when Pastor Kendall and Starla felt called to start this church, our church joined with Calvary Church in Irving in sowing the foundational seed for this church. And so then my son Dylan came and worked here. And so I have a heart for the house and love for your pastors. Had the privilege of meeting with the pastoral staff this morning. What a great group of ladies and gentlemen you have serving in this church. And it's good to be here with you today. I was at John McKenzie's church last night, Hope Church in Frisco, and ran into, I want to say Kara. I started to say Starla, but that's the pastor's wife. Kara Sheila, Maury Davis, and Madeline, her mother, was in Cornerstone for a number of years before they moved back to Dallas, so it's good to have them with us today. I'm going to get into the Word in just a moment. At the end of the service, I'm going to be out there at the book table. Let me just tell you about these two books. This is a book called The Last Ride. In 2013, I was diagnosed with non-treatable cancer, and my son Dylan was graduating from high school, and I realized that my older kids were married and had a little bit greater foundation, but that just graduating and losing your father might mess a person up. So I wrote 30 devotions for Dylan. This is just dad to Dylan. And I took him on a motorcycle ride around the continental borders of the United States, 12,700 miles in 30 days, and documentation of restaurants, trips and devotions are in here, and then how God healed me and what a letter from Dylan, what that meant to him. And it'd be a great graduation gift this coming May. This is my favorite book. It's my first book, Why I Believe in Santa Claus, and I wrote it to torment Pentecostal people. You know, I wasn't raised in church, so when I got out of prison and I ran into true Pentecostal people, I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. It only matters what God thinks. But, you know, they said, we don't celebrate Christmas because Santa is Satan's name rearranged. And I thought, why don't y'all fight against the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy or leprechauns or something? I mean, the history of St. Nicholas is one of the most phenomenal stories in the world. The most visible Christian that has ever lived. More well known today in Buddhist lands and Muslim lands, dung huts in the Masai Mara, and I've been all those places in the last 2 years, is Santa Claus. They've never heard of Jesus, never heard of James, Peter, or John, never heard of Paul, but they've heard of Santa Claus. So I captured the story of Nicholas. If any of you ever heard the story, The Secret of Giving is Giving in Secret? Yeah, that's who said that. Over 500 years ago. Do you know he was put in prison because he wouldn't deny the infallibility of the Word of God? Did you know who was involved in writing the Nicene Creed, the written doctrine of the Trinity? Santa Claus, St. Nicholas. A little bit of my testimony's in here. That's in here. I hope you'll take the time to stop by and we'll autograph them for you and do stuff. Let me just show you my family real quick. Up here, that's my wife, the two blonde-haired girls, and the boy on your right are Galen. They're triplets. And in 1986, God gave us two girls and a boy. The girls are identical twins than him. So it's Danielle, my wife Gail, Gabrielle. If you've seen one of them, you see both of them. It's Gabrielle, Gail, Danielle, and Galen. Now, just so you know, my name is Maurice. So it's actually Marissa Gabrielle, Maury Danielle, and Galen Maurice. And then all the way over here to the left is Dylan Maurice. And so Dylan worked here. They're all married. Gabby has 2 children. Galen has 2 children. And Dylan just had his second child. And the pictures of the grandchildren are right there. The 2 boys in the back are Davis and Harry. They're twins, Gabrielle's twins. The little blonde-haired boy, that's a boy with all that little curly hair, is Stetson Oak. He's got the right name. He's just got to grow into it. And then over here on the right is Sailor Reese. She's the oldest of the grandchildren. She's 6. And that's Dylan's oldest son, Griffin. That picture is about 1.5 years old. And so, I mean, that's Mac Davis there. His youngest son is named Griffin. And so I've got 6 grandchildren. And At this point, we're a male-dominated family. And our family experiences toxic masculinity every time the kids come out to play. And I get tickled about new phrases. Toxic masculinity. That's like having too much fun. How can how can a man be too much man? I mean, our world has lost its mind. Everybody understand that? Yeah. Somebody asked me, what are you going to do when you go home? I said, I'm going to practice toxic masculinity. Which means I'm going to do what my wife tells me to do. Would you stand? Would you stand? Those of you that know me know that that's not true. Okay. I meet people all over the world, and they have aspirations and desires and dreams. Only 5% of the people in the world ever achieve their dreams. Only 5%. I wrote a letter May the 18th, 1975 to my mother. It was the night that I was convicted and was told I had a 20-year prison sentence in the Texas Department of Corrections. And I said, Mom, God has spoken to me this afternoon with the miracle that he gave us of me not being put in the electric chair or sent to prison for life. These are the dreams God has put in my heart. Last year, 2018, on May the 18th, I sat down with my children, handed them a copy of that letter. And by the grace of God, was able to write done on every dream that God gave me. I met a God when I was locked up in the Dallas County Jail who is able to do exceedingly and abundantly more than we can ask or think. So when I talk to you about how to achieve your dreams, it's kind of my lane. It's something that I lived in. See, for 8.5 years, I was in a 5-foot wide and a 9-foot long cell when I wasn't picking cotton or hoeing corn or doing hard labor down at the Texas Department of Corrections. I learned how to dream. I read the Bible about 3 hours a day for those 5 years, and God restored my mind and unlocked my spirit and showed me some things. And as I go through the church, I see so many people that have a dream that unless you change the way you think about the way you walk with God, you're never going to achieve it. Because the way you think won't get you where you want to be. That's why we have to renew our mind. That's why we have to break out of. See, you say, well, you were institutionalized in prison. You can be institutionalized in prison. You can be born in a poor area town, a ghetto, and you develop ghetto mentality. That's an institutional. You can be in church so long that you develop institutionalized thinking, and you're no longer being led by the Spirit because you're trapped by tradition. And so we want to break through some of those things today in the next few moments. Book of Judges, chapter 6, verse 12. It's the story of Gideon. You all know it. The Bible says it this way: the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior." And Gideon said to him, "O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." And the Lord looked at him and said, "Go in this your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you?" And he said, "O Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I'm the youngest in my father's house." But the Lord said to him, "Surely I will be with you, and you shall defeat Midian as one man." You may be seated. God bless you. Verse 15 is an indicator of our humanity. It's where Gideon looks at God and he said, "Hey God, I need to remind you that I am from the tribe of Manasseh." That's the least tribe, though the weakest tribe. And out of the weakest tribe, I am the least in that tribe. I'm the weakest in the whole tribe. And you think sometimes God just kind of wants to back up and look at somebody and say, "Who told you that? Where did I didn't give you that idea. I didn't give you that revelation. I didn't give you that information. I didn't give you that identification. Who told you that you were from the weakest tribe and you're the least likely person to do anything significant?" How many times does God identify our wrong thinking so that we'll start changing the way we think? Remember when the Jewish spies went into the promised land, and they were in the promised land, and they came back and said, "We were as grasshoppers in our own eyes, and also in the eyes of the giants that are in the land." Well, here would be the question: did you go talk to the giants? No, you just assumed because you thought you were unable, they thought you were unable. The fact is, the Bible says they were afraid of you because they had heard about the miracles your God was doing. But because you assumed something, you failed to accomplish what God sent you to accomplish. How many of us are stuck where we are because we have a thought that God didn't give us that is not realistic? Well, she can do it, but I can't do it. He can do it, but I can't do it. They can do it, but we can't do it. Who told you that? What would happen if you actually believed all things are possible? You'd start acting like it. What happened if you thought you could have a miracle? You'd reach for it. What happened if you just thought you wanted the girl? You'd go for it. I'm going to take a little liberty right here. I'm out of prison about a year and a half. Pastor George is standing on the stage. Back when we came out on the side stage and sat on the stage. And he looked at me and said, Davis, are you dating anybody? I said, no, sir. He said, why not? I said, you hadn't given me a day off in forever. You worked me like a dog. He said, well, I want to make sure that you stayed out of trouble. But he said, it's time for you. He said, do you want to get married? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, who would you marry? And I looked out. We're standing on the stage looking at the church. I said, Pastor, I committed a murder. I'm an ex-meth addict. I'm a felon. These church girls are not going to marry me. I'm going to have to go down on Harry Hines and get one of them old gals down there and get her saved. And yeah, I got to go to the corner to get my wife. I'm going down there. And he says, you're not going to do that. Don't let your past control your future. Yeah. I need to watch myself. I get loose today. And he said, how about that girl on the piano, Gail Daniels? I said, Pastor, she's engaged. He went, so? I said, okay. I'm in submission to spiritual authority. She plays the piano. She's pretty, looks good, cute little gal. So I take her fiance, Phil, to work out. And we work out, and you know, he's a mortgage banker that lives at home with his mother at 28 years of age. Tells you all you really need about him. And I told him, I said, Phil, I don't want to do anything behind anybody's back. I believe everything we do ought to be done in the light. People, you know, so I'm going to marry Gail. And he goes, oh, whatever. And I said, I told you. That next week, I got a call to go to Midlothian, Texas, and preach a tent revival to start the Assembly of God Church in Midlothian. Would you come? About an hour later, the guy called me back, Pastor Brazier out of Irving. And he said, Maury, do you know anybody who plays the piano and sings? I said, I have that person. So I called Gail Daniels. She and I have not had a conversation, invited her to go play and sing. I said, hey, tell Phil that I've invited you. He can go with us. I mean, no reason to do this behind his back. We get to the car. Brother Brazier gets in the car. Gail gets in the car. I get in the car. And I said, where's Phil? She said, well, his mom's out of town. He has to stay home and walk his dog. A grown man just told you he's got eyes on your woman. And you're at home walking your mommy's dog. Obviously, you don't practice toxic masculinity. We go, we preach, we sing, have a great time. We both love church. We get back to the old Calvary Temple Church on Airport Freeway. Dr. Brazier lets us out and says, man, y'all, and I look at her and I said, did you get to eat? She goes, no. I said, could I take you to lunch? To dinner. She goes, oh, I'm starving. She thinks we're going down to Shoney's or Denny's, but there used to be a Greek restaurant called Costas down on Northwest Highway. So I took her to Costas for a Greek Chateaubriand. So we're sitting there and the candlelight's going, and I didn't get to go all the way to college, but my minor degree is in psychology that I got while I was in prison. And so I'd learned about hormone release in the female brain, and that if you can get a woman to make eye contact with you for 2 minutes and not change eye contact, bonding hormones, you know, that dopamine, and begins to be released. And so we're talking, the candle's lit, and I got her interested in the conversation. I start telling her this sad prison story. And it's going to end up with me being a good hero. And so, yeah. And as we talk, I just begin to lower my voice a little bit. Well, a lower decibel in your voice registers as an authoritative person. But I lowered it not only in tone, in decibel, but also in volume, which means by the end of the story, we're here across this candle. And you practice touch, because that also releases some chemicals in the body. And I'd touch her hand and touch her hand and touch her hand. Finally, I just kind of took it and held it. And by the end of the story, we're just sitting there, and I got done, and I'm just sitting there looking. And she goes, oh, I feel like I'm cheating on Phil. I said, well, I talked to Phil, and I need to tell you I'm going to marry you. She goes, what? So 2 weeks later, nothing's happening, and I go to do a funeral, and long story short, they have a person sing at the funeral. So Gail comes in the green room, not knowing I'm the speaker. I don't know she's singer. And she comes in, she goes, oh, my goodness. I said, how many people's God got to kill? This is inevitable. Phil realized he was in trouble. I go to her office. She's got roses, like, wow. I'm a janitor. He's a mortgage banker. I thought, I can't compete with that, so I'm going to change the atmosphere, because the difference in where you are and where you want to be is atmosphere. The only difference in here and heaven is atmosphere. If we change the atmosphere, we change our access. So anywhere you can change atmosphere, you can change what you can access. So I sent a flower, a carnation, to every woman that worked with her, all 6 of them, wrote them each a handwritten note of why I would love Gail and take care of Gail, and we'd do something for God. And Phil was going to make her move in his mama's house and walk his mama's dog. Every secretary around Gail began to say, Maury's the man. Maury's the man. Everywhere she went, Maury's the man. Maury's the man. Now, some of you just won't go for it like that because you don't think it's available. See, people say, you can't get her. She's engaged. She's raised in church. She's got a master's degree in piano performance. You've got an education from Iron Gates University. You're a professional cotton picker, and you're a janitor at a church. But you know, with God, all things are possible. And I want you to get that in your spirit today, because some of you said, I can't do it. You can do anything God calls you to do. And so one of the things we want to do is understand what we're not doing. We're not here to create moral people. Creating moral people is moralism. You can teach people how not to drink and cuss and do all these things, but we need Christ formed in us. When we're here to have a Christ encounter, a Jesus encounter, and when Jesus comes in us, He changes our hearts, and those other things are dealt with. It's not that Christians are immoral, it's that we're not moral to be Christian. We're moral because we're Christians. It's Christ has been formed in us, and we walk by faith and not by sight. The problem in most Christians is you have a lamb mentality, not a lion mentality. Jesus revealed Himself in the metaphor of a lamb and the metaphor of a lion. Most Christians want to relate to gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Gentle Jesus loves everybody. Gentle Jesus never did anything wrong. And that, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. You're not incorrect. You're just incomplete. Because He was not only that, but He was also the Lion of the tribe of Judah that rose from the dead with the keys of death, hell, and the grave in His hand. And you need to relate to the lion. If you only relate to the lamb, you'll be a good person. But if you relate to the lion, you'll have a good life. And you got to learn how to let that roar out. You need to develop the disposition of a lion, that there are some things God wants you to chase down and get a hold of and own for yourself. We celebrate Jericho. Jericho was great, but you know, when the walls came down, all those people that lived in there still had spears and knives and stones and slingshots. You didn't get what was in Jericho because God made the wall fall down. You got what was in Jericho because you crawled over the rubble and you fought the enemy that had the property God said He was going to give to you. Most people don't really understand the battle is important, and you need to develop the disposition of fighting it. It's not that God just wants you to be violent. It's that God knows the value of the warring. See, when you're in the stress, when you're in the struggle, when you're in the pain and the pathos of a battle, you're developing some muscle you would not get without pressing. You don't develop muscle by looking at your arm. You develop muscle by pushing your arm and stressing your arm out. And God wants you to develop muscle, because if you get something you're not ready for, the blessing will become a burden. You know, a kid wants to carry his dad's briefcase, but he can't carry it very far. It's too heavy. He could grow into it to where it's not a big deal. The warring is where you grow. It's where you develop, because every blessing you get comes with the backside. There are no blessings that don't have negatives with them. Listen to me. There are no blessings that don't have negatives with them. Every pastor that said, God called me to preach, had no idea people were going to walk out the door on them, talk about them, criticize them, minimize them. Do you understand? Everybody in here has an opinion. And some of the things you laughed at, other people are wounded over. Now, I'm not a normal pastor. If you're easily wounded, you need to get over that. I was offended. That's a choice, and it's a stupid choice. Stop getting offended. So just don't be stupid, and we're going to have a good service. Does that make sense? We all have the opportunity to get offended over things. Healthy people get past it. You say, well, I got the corner office. Good. Now you're responsible for all those employees, and when they go home and they don't think a thing about till they go to work tomorrow, you got to go home and figure out what went wrong today, how to fix it tomorrow. You're working in the midnight hour where they're sleeping. You got the corner office, but you also got responsibilities that if you're not ready for them will break you down. You say, well, I got married. I got a blessing. You got a backside too. Every woman in here says, I didn't expect that. And it may be different with every man, but you got something you didn't expect. You got a slob. You got a perfectionist. You got a picky eater. You got a guy that doesn't talk. He just makes noises. I thought you'd just, you know, we all believe in unicorns. Every woman believes she's going to marry a man that's hyper emotional and low sexual. That's a unicorn. And every man dreams he's going to marry a woman with very low emotions and hypersexual desires. That's a unicorn. Everything you get comes with a backside. I thought we were just going to cuddle. No. That's like cooking and not eating. And until, we need to edit this one. I don't want Pastor to hear this one. Until we learn our spouse, and every person's different, until we grow into the healthy relationship after the honeymoon's over, there are rocky points. Do we spank our children? Do we only use time out? Do we tell our children to go to bed without food, or do we sit there at the table for 4 hours? All those issues happen, but as you battle through them, you develop the strength to become what you need to be. And so you're ready for the front side, but you're not ready for the backside, and that's what the warring does. It gets you ready for the backside, and Judges is a blueprint in battle for what you need to do so you can get some victory in life. How many of you are singing songs? Joshua wrote it this way: how long will you hesitate to enter into and obtain what God has already given you? In other words, God gave it to you. How long are you going to wait to occupy that land? So here would be the question to you today. How long are you going to live where you don't have to live? You're going to live in insecurity. You're going to live in inferiority. It's not where God wants you to live. You're going to live in hypersensitivity. You're going to live in brokenness. You're going to live in sickness. You're going to live in anger. You're going to live. How long are you going to live in unforgiveness? Well, 35 years ago, my daddy. 35 years ago, my mama. They're dead. The only place yesterday lives is in your brain. Change your thought. Because you can't stop what happened. You got to get over it. People say, well, it's just not that easy. Great things are never easy to achieve, but they're always worth it. Get the help you need, whatever it is. You got to change the way you think. You got to change the way you get there. You got to internalize biblical principles rather than internalize your emotions and externalize the Word. There's a phrase in psychiatry called neuroplasticity, and it's how the brain changes from conscious thought to subconscious thought at an effective level. The best way I know to explain it is that everybody here will get. Remember when you first started driving and you had the car and you're kind of like, hope I make this? Now you drive down the road and you ladies, you know, you see people doing things in the car. They're doing their eyelashes, they're doing their lips, they're doing their hair, they're shaving, got their legs all up on the dash, shaving their legs. I mean, they just drive down the road and they don't run anybody, you know, they just do stuff. And what happened is you started out having to pay incredible attention to the front end of that car. But somewhere it moved from conscious thought to subconscious thought, and now you just do it, and you do it effectively and efficiently, and you accomplish what you, and you're not using your brain power, because neuroplasticity has set your brain free to go on to other things. What would happen if you took the Word of God and internalized it and renewed your mind so that whatever things are good, whatever things are pure, if there's anything noble, anything worthy of praise, you thought on those things? What all of a sudden, when you change the way you think, you change the things you say. And so of getting up and cussing, you begin to praise. Instead of complaining, you begin to give God some glory. Instead of complaining and griping and moaning and groaning and frustrating and negating what God could do, you immediately release in the middle of a crisis, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Whatever the devil means for evil, God's going to turn for good. My God is a God that is able to do exceedingly and abundantly. What happens if all of a sudden neuroplasticity in your mind allowed your spirit man to dictate how your conduct happens in the middle of a crisis? But you got to learn how to war. You got to learn how to fight through those things. You got to learn how to get there. And so we're going to look at the first 6 chapters of Judges right now in 8 minutes and 43 seconds. Because Judges is the blueprint for battle in the Old Testament, like Ephesians is the blueprint for battle in the New Testament. And in Judges chapter 1, it's talking about a king by the name of Adonai-Bezek. It said, and Adonai-Bezek fled, and they pursued him and caught him and cut off his thumbs and his big toes. Let me ask you a question. How many of you know somebody that's 40 or 50 years of age that life is overwhelming? Come on, raise your hands. You know people who life is overwhelming. I mean, they're always overwhelmed. They didn't practice this. You see, they cut off that king's toes and his thumbs so he could never hold a sword and fight with them again. He couldn't chase them because he had no balance. He couldn't keep them from moving them because he couldn't balance. They were in absolute control of that king. He could never create a battle again. That's why David cut off Goliath's head. He said, I've stuck you down with a stone, but I'm going to cut your head off because you are never coming back. This battle is over. Here's the problem in our society. We had people that were abused when they were children. That was horrible. But the fact is they were 10 or 8 or 5 or 4 or 10 or 15, whatever it was. We had kids that were rejected. Their dad left their mother left the family. They went through a horrible divorce, and they went through the damage of divorce. We had kids that they were said something in school. The teacher said, you're a stupid kid, or you need to go to the slow class, or you're not ever going to be anything. And those words kept coming into these people's lives. A coach said, you have no athleticism. All along life's way, you may get up, you fail out of college, or you don't get to the degree you want, you get a degree you don't want, the job you want, you don't get, now you're doing a job you don't want to do. You have a mate leave, you have a spouse cheat, or whatever the case may be. Things go wrong in life, and now you're my age, and instead of fighting the battle of the 60s, you're fighting the battle of the 5s and the 15s and the 25s and the 35s, because even though you won the battle, you didn't finish it. You don't ever finish it where you get it out of your mind, you get it out of your heart, you get it out of your head. You look at that and say, I'm done with that. I'm not talking about my daddy leaving my mother anymore. I'm done with that. That no longer has control over me, because I have a father who is better than the father I had. I have a father who has loved me. I have a family that has not left me. I have a love that will never forsake me. I found something. I'm over that. Some of you you just won't finish it. You're still talking. My husband left me 30 years ago. At what point he forgot you? Forget him. Well, my heart was broken. You gonna live like that forever? How about just go to the altar and get rid of it? Put it to bed. You know, the second chapter of the book of Judges is where they go in and they're told to conquer the land. Instead of conquering the people and putting them in the right position in their life, they marry the people. And because they marry people they were called to, not called to marry, called to minister to, they have people that they're called to minister to in the married position. Now they're in wrong relationships, and wrong relationships will destroy the destiny of God in your life. Some of you have people in your life that are negative, that are doubt-filled, that are bitter, that are angry, that are cynical, that are sarcastic, and you allow them too much access into your life to where their influence is greater in you than your influence is greater in them. And you've got the wrong people in the wrong place in your life, and because you have the wrong people in the wrong place, you're experiencing the wrong life. And you've got to be willing to say, you don't belong in my presence. There are some people you got to back up because they're being used to the enemy to destroy God's destiny in your life. The third thing, and my favorite chapter in Judges is Judges chapter 3, and it's about Ehud, the left-handed king, the only left-handed king in Israel. The story is so interesting because he came from the tribe of Benjamin. If you remember, Jacob loved Rachel, and when Rachel was giving birth to her son, she was dying. And in the middle of the sorrow of dying, in the middle of the pain of dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, son of my sorrows. People that love you in pain will label you. Why would somebody that loved me say that? They're in pain and gave you a bad label. But there's a biblical truth there. Jacob walked in. The father walked in and said, that's not son of my sorrows. That's Benjamin, son of my right hand. And he relabeled, he gave him a new name. They gave him a new destiny. Benjamin, son of the right hand, power. Now think about it. Ehud is a left-handed boy in a right-handed tribe. You know he got made fun of. You know they said he was handicapped, he was different, he was deformed, he was dysfunctional. All the things people say to each other that damage each other because somebody's different from us, we throw a label on him. He was labeled all his life. But his deformity, his difference, his dynamic of not fitting in was actually an indicator of the destiny God had made. See, some of you are different and you have people look at you and say, I don't understand that person. You say, nobody gets me but me. Instead of running from your difference, you need to embrace your difference, because the way God made you identifies God's destiny in your life. See, they carry their little swords on the right thing. Had he pulled the sword out with his right hand, his dagger actually, with his right hand, it's about 18 inches long, he'd had to pull it out, flip it over, and stab the king. The king probably would have had time to move into a defensive posture or actually attack him back. And maybe what happened doesn't happen the way it is. But because he's left-handed, he's the only king in Israel that could do what he did. Take his sword straight out into the king's belly. What everybody had made fun of was God's creative purpose identification that he can do what no other king can do. Somebody says, you're just different. People look at me and say, you're just different. If nobody does it, I celebrate me. My wife said, I don't think anybody enjoys your preaching more than you. I said, I know it. I hate boring preachers. I love holiness, but holiness does not exclusive of happiness. You know, you can be happy and holy. No, Christians, I don't, you know, John McKenzie said it so well last night. He said that used to be if it was fun, it was wrong. That's not true. That's not true. Ehud was the left-handed king. We go to chapter 4 and talk about Thanksgiving, go to chapter 5, talk about Deborah's strategic warfare. But let's go back to chapter 6, to Gideon. God is speaking to Gideon. He's in a wine vat. He has a dream of a nation, but he's living in a wine vat. Instead of living in his dream, he's living in his nightmare. It's an amazing moment. And God says, Gideon, you mighty man of valor. See, what happens when God speaks, the pneuma of God, the breath of God, releases creativity. When God speaks, things are formed. When God speaks to a man living in fear and calls him a mighty man, whether his head gets it or not, in his spirit man, something is imparted that is going to change his destiny as time goes by. And God says, you mighty man of valor, you're going to deliver Israel from Midian. Point of all this sermon, God was only introducing Gideon to the Gideon had met. I want you to think about what I said. God was introducing Gideon to the Gideon had met. Because before God introduces Gideon to the destiny he hasn't achieved, he has to introduce Gideon to the Gideon had met. Every time God wants to give you a new calling, a new purpose, a new assignment, he has to introduce you to a part of you haven't met yet. And he does it by his word and his spirit. Only 5% of people in the world achieve their dreams. 5%. You know what the number one thing they do? It's not prayer. It's not Bible study. They write it down. I didn't realize at 18 years of age, writing down what God said to me was an indicator that I would be able to check it off the list. One of my heart issues for people is that you don't ever leave a church service without meeting the you need to meet to find the dream come to pass. And whether it's a kid that's gone crazy, a spouse that's gone crazy, a friend that's gone crazy, a financial vision you have of starting a business, I don't really care what the dream is. There is a spiritual component that God needs to introduce you to the you haven't met. So I'm going to ask a question, and I'm not going to take long. If you're here today and you say, Maury, I have a dream, or I had a dream and I gave up on it. I didn't understand that it could still come to pass at any age. I want to pray for you. If you have that dream, would you stand up? Just stand up all over this building. How many of you believe your dream was given to you by God? Raise your hand. It's okay. Do you know that's critical to achieving it? Because if it's dreams that comes out of the flesh, not a big deal. That's a fantasy, pipe dream. But a spirit dream, wow, that could be awesome. So God, I pray in the name of Jesus for the people that are standing that you would release in them a spirit of faith. You would release in them a spirit of power. You would release in them a heart of hope. You would release in them the knowledge of the Word of God in their minds that comes down and releases faith out of their spirit. A release in them, a praise in advance of the dream being made manifest, so that the atmosphere around them can be changed to achieve the dream that is out there in front of them. God, let their dreams always be greater than their memories. Let their future always be brighter than the past. Give them the energy, the strength, the passion, and the tools that they need to accomplish what you called them to accomplish. Allow them to not give up. Let them never again live in the land of a lamb, when they can roar like a lion. Let them move from being a victim to a fighter, and let them achieve it in Jesus' name. Amen. Pastor.